Welcome to the Beyond Body podcast with your hosts, Mia and Holly. Join us for a sometimes fortnightly podcast
where we explore all things mental health, being a messy human, and how to get the most out of this one precious life.
and all the ridiculous stories in between. Welcome back. We have for the first time not lived up to our fortnightly, but our sometimes fortnightly reputation.
Is it the first time? I feel like if we backtrack, there's zero chance that
First time in a while.
First time in a while, but this is pretty good. 3 weeks because we had a retreat smack bam in the middle of there. So I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. So you did a beautiful thing in our last ep, which was asking for a highlight and a low light, which I think is a beautiful way to start. And we'd encourage anyone else to share theirs as well. We love to hear what you guys are up to as well. So highlight, low light for you. I think with some recent stuff we've had going on, I can guess a highlight.
I reckon I have a few highlights. I'll have I'll have a few little micro highlights.
Do a tier list.
Obviously I think the week post-retreat is so many mixed emotions.
Mm-hmm.
This retreat, they're all gorgeous, but this one was it just felt so special. I think because, look, for everyone that comes to our retreats, the guest experience is always awesome. But this time we really nailed the back end.
Oh yeah.
We really nailed it. So I think just the feeling post-retreat, it's like, I literally can't even explain it. I actually had the most beautiful drive back home. Like I went the morning I left the coast, went for this 5 a.m. swim, got a coffee, drove to Braidwood and just went and sat at this really cute cafe and had breakfast and just journaled about the experience for hours. And it's such a nice way to like reflect on that entire time. Because I think it's so easy in life to do something and then be like, cool, next, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And I feel like I'm always reminded of this lesson, just the value of just taking your time to just sit in beautiful things that have happened. So huge, that was a huge highlight. Other little like kind of micro highlights for me at the moment I have been rinsing the Wicked soundtrack. I haven't seen the movie yet. Do you like Wicked?
I have seen it on like in Sydney on stage and really loved it. But I do know that you love a soundtrack. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
So I've been like, haven't seen the movie yet, but I have been like, just try going on a walk and listening to the song Defying Gravity and not like default into main character, passionate performance mode. It's literally impossible. The new versions of these songs are incredible. So that's been a big like endorphin hit for me over the last week.
Gorgeous. What about a low light?
Low light. I was reflecting to myself a little bit this morning and I am getting pretty tired of packing a suitcase. I just said to Mill before we jumped on the call, I'm literally headed straight to the airport after this podcast recording to spend a few weeks with like family and friends up north, which is gorgeous and I'm super grateful for it. But this girl is like ready for some routine. I had like 2 days of routine like today and yesterday and I was like, oh my God, that was so nice. Imagine a life of this. So I'm feeling like not burnt out, but like pretty ready for a bit of change. So I feel like that's kind of my low light at the moment.
Yeah. Bit of like, I don't know, what do you call the opposite of itchy feet? Where you want to, I know that feeling, like where you want to take off, but then there's the kind of
grounded
concrete boots.
What about you, Phil? What's been going on in your world?
I mean, highlight for sure was, so hard to pick any single one at the retreat. I think, like you said, this time we nailed it on so many different fronts, and especially this time getting to do, like I get to do my one-to-one coaching sessions with people, and especially in that part of the world, being able to take them to this, beautiful spot in Narrawali that I've spent so many important and peaceful moments of my life, and being able to, just be able to help them anchor to what is the retreat for. We're obviously having such a beautiful time together there in the moment, and then it's okay, now what is actually coming next for you. It's very exciting to explore that because people have such cool things that they want to do, and often just a belief they can't do it, and it's a huge privilege to be able to sit with them and unpack, why can't you do that, and to have them leave going, actually maybe not only I can do it, but there's some tangible steps I can take towards having the life I want, not just like the recovery I want, but the life beyond it all.
It's so special because I think, we were saying to each other, this retreat could have very easily just been a retreat that's about life. Like it doesn't, everyone there has this, mutual shared experience of suffering with food, but that's not even like the icing on the top of the cake of what these retreats are all about.
Absolutely not. And I'd say low light. Well, it's not really low light, but I obviously like you, it's kind of vulnerability hangover. It's, people
Yeah.
interaction overload by, with all the stuff that we're doing. And, they're fairly long days. They're wonderful days, but they're long days. And I had like Jose and I do a monthly sleepover, and she was meant to come Friday. And what I love about our friendship, so many things, but one of them is we always get in touch beforehand, and we're like, if you for any reason need to cancel, if you're sick, if
Mm,
you're tired, whatever, it's all good. And I absolutely had to cash in one of those chips this past
mm,
week. And so not as much sort of connection as I would have liked as far as the end of the week, but it was also, I think, a really positive thing to prioritize some of that downtime and some of that rest that I've really been needing. Um,
mm.
so that was a low light, not getting to see Jose, but it was, like I said, good message to self. It's okay to sort of balance that out and, you know.
Totally. Someone said to me recently, and it's like the most simple piece of advice, but I was like, you know what? That's spot on that you actually can't have fun all the time.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's like self-care and rest and rejuvenation just needs to be more of a priority, even if that means that you might miss out on like going out or like seeing a friend or like doing something that also would have filled up your own cup because
Yes.
we need to be flexible always in the way in which we're actually filling up our cup of life, and particularly
Hmm.
going through like a really busy period. We are also in December, which is notoriously just this super, super busy time of the year,
Mm.
right? So I think just being able to like stop, reflect, rest, rejuvenate, and prioritize that, very special skill to have at this very special time of the year.
Completely, because like as you say, I mean, you know me, I'm always when we do things like this afterwards, I'm like, so Holly, I found this house and I think we should do this thing. And I think there's 10 more things that we could do because this is amazing. And like I'm already between days like looking up all this stuff that we could be doing in 6 months' time. And I did a little bit of that and then I really pulled it back and just went, no, in the big picture in the long term for you to be able to do this stuff, there's got to be so much reinvestment in self. So
Mm,
yeah, but I mean, that's a terrible low light because there just haven't been that many. It's just been an
mm,
amazing couple of weeks. We are so lucky, Hole, and I am back in that phase of, I remember when I first started this business, being able to like be at home and work and meet up with clients and do this
mm.
stuff. I was like just full of gratitude all the time because I was like,
Love
my
that.
life is so cool. I get to do this. And you can come in and out of that sometimes. And
Oh,
this is
yeah.
definitely a season of like, how lucky are we, you know?
Mm, mm. But I also feel like when you're reinvesting into yourself, which I love that term,
Mm.
so a lot more often you're actually going to enjoy just the work and like the body of everything so much more. So I think even that is just such a testament to do the rest thing now so you can enjoy more of life later.
Yes, be fully in it, be fully there, not just like running at 20% all the time and kind of experiencing it.
Yeah, I really experienced that. Everyone, we will get on to the content of
Yeah.
the episode soon. We're just chatting at this point. I
It is
really
on
experienced
theme. It is on theme.
It is on theme. I really experienced this when I was traveling overseas. I just felt so inspired by the work and I was just so just like felt really engaged and on fire with client calls and was just like loving the problem solving and all of it. And
Mm.
we just felt really connected to clients and the work. And I think it was because I was filling up my own cup so much. It's kind of
Mm.
be like, I'd leave the client work day, I'm done by midday, and then I just do my own thing and I'd surf and I'd hang out with friends and I'd do things, but it was still very rejuvenating. So I
Yeah.
think when I like have like 50-50, I would say, of like life work, it feels really good for me and I enjoy both of the 50s more than I would if just one was taking up too much space.
Completely. And I think it can be so easy when you're so passionate about a job. Like, I don't clock
Mm,
off at 5 o'clock and go, oh, I hate my job. It's like,
totally.
what's all this other cool stuff I could be doing? So, always having to keep that in mind, always a work in progress. But
Mm.
on that topic, I mean, it's interesting we dove into this
Yeah.
conversation because we wanted to explore the unexpected gifts that recovery can bring, because I
Mm,
think we both have a very keen understanding that that has been our experience, that what we got out of recovery was very unexpected versus what we might have predicted going in. And also now what we're making available to other people through coaching, but also through these incredible retreats that we get to throw for people. What do you think about this topic? Were you excited to do it?
Oh my God, so excited to do it. I think
Mm.
these are the kind of episodes that we love doing on the podcast
Yeah.
because, this is a recovery podcast. We're always going to talk about recovery things, but we are just both so passionate about the life beyond recovery and really helping people understand and cognize and experience what that actually is and having a little bit of look at what recovery offers you beyond, the black and white meal plan, etc., is so cool.
Yes, completely. That's what makes this work worth doing. Otherwise, I don't think we either of us would be doing it.
Mhm.
So for you personally, what are some of the expected gifts first? Let's do that first, or
Yeah.
benefits you thought that you might get out of recovery when you were going in, some of those predictions you were making.
Honestly, when I went into it, I didn't really think further than that.
Yeah.
Obviously it was just about immediate relief for me. I think I was at this point where I was like, look, enough is enough. And I, with a lot of shame, like sought out help, but had no idea what I was getting out of this. And I think part of that was also because I honestly just didn't even understand the depth of how much I was struggling because there was
Mm.
just so much denial. So of course I wasn't going to be like, I'm going to get so much out of this experience. Like I literally had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I think some of the basics that I wanted and desired from the beginning would have been, relief from consuming behaviors,
Hmm.
a better relationship with food and just better overall well-being. Honestly, I just wanted to have some like positive diary entries, I think. And I didn't think any further than that.
Yes, I think relief is what people like. They're just looking for an absence of
Yeah.
suffering or an
Yeah.
absence of behaviors, because that was
Yeah.
me too. Because so many of us go in so naive, especially if there isn't a lot of information available to you, which for me, there really wasn't because of, we talk about the benefits and the consequences of things like recovery content, but that I think is where it can be helpful, is it can give you an
Mm,
idea of what you're going into this for
yeah.
sometimes if you find the good side of that world. And so for me, I was just like, I just want to stop one kind of behavior because I think that's the only problem, right? Like, not realizing there was a whole lot of other behaviors that were actually leading to that ultimate outcome that I didn't like, which, just to be transparent, was binging and purging. Like, for me, that was the one I was like, that's the one that I want to get rid of. Everything else is fine. And just less chatter, less self-hatred. If people watch my initial videos, I'm very reluctant to use the term eating disorder at the start and really just talk about
Mm.
like depression and anxiety. That's what I wanted relief from, not realizing that it was all intermingled. So it was like one behavior I wanted to get rid of, and I just wanted to be a little bit happier if that was possible. That was
Mm.
and I thought that was the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the cool thing, right? That so many people go into recovery and yeah, they have these little ideas of what they maybe could get out of it, but you never actually get to really know what's the outcome of something is going to be. Like you have no idea what picking up the phone and booking that first psychology appointment could lead to, or even, in other areas of life as well, even if just being brave enough to try something new, that's so cool. I think so much of our understanding of our life is going to happen in hindsight, right? Where we get to trace back little steps and like see all the different twists and turns and the entire tapestry of our life. And we get to really like acknowledge and appreciate these really big and sometimes incredibly hard detours.
Mm.
And because everyone's going to have these experiences, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you absolutely understand this experience, or you understand it because a loved one is going through it, and you still have your own experience, right? And like this is really hard. So knowing that whatever this experience is, whatever the outcome is, there's going to be so much to learn from it. And there's always these hidden little gifts along the way, no matter whether it's a breakup or recovery or, going through something significant in life, you will learn so much. This is the thing. No one learns, giant assumption I'm making about everyone in the world right now.
Yeah.
Um, no one learns anything when life is going really well.
Yes.
I feel like no, that's not true, but we learn the most when we're going through difficult times, right? Because
Mm.
we're forced to pay attention and look at what is working and what isn't working and how we want to hold ourselves and support ourselves. And recovery, like I couldn't even, when I was thinking about this episode, I couldn't even come up with all of them. I was like, there's too many. I'm too overwhelmed. Like, there's going to be too many that I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it's this ever unfolding experience.
Hmm. Completely. And I think, speaking to that, we can't judge a process when we're in it. We can't judge its efficacy
Yes.
or its value or what it's going to bring us. And I think that I see people in recovery doing that all the time, where they're like trying to estimate whether it's worth it. And I'm like, you don't have all the information yet.
Yeah.
You're trying to pick between two cities that you want to live in, and you've barely visited the second one. You've like seen photos of it. You haven't even like traveled there yet. So you don't have all the information to be able to
Yeah.
make a fully informed decision yet.
Oh my God, absolutely. And that really makes me think about so many people who struggle with food and particularly with, if you have a restrictive eating disorder or that's a component of it, so often will also really struggle with rigidity and want to know what is next and what it looks like and
Mm.
having, the timeline and everything makes sense. But if you are so focused on this narrow view of what recovery could look like or should look like, you're going to miss a lot of the things along the way. It's like that beautiful metaphor you talk about when you're just looking at the tree, right? And I think to be able to see the gifts, like you've got to sit back and you have to realize that like you can't see into the future. You don't get to know if you're going to be able to, do this big recovery challenge or whatever it might be. But
Mm.
what we do know is that this experience is going to offer you so much if you're looking in the right places.
Completely. So I know this is an impossible question because there are so
Mm.
many. So we can go anywhere with it. But now that you're through the process and beyond the process, and even using the process in the work that we're doing
Mm.
now, what are some of the unexpected gifts that, and we're not even done yet, right? But thus
Totally.
far, that you
Totally.
can see have resulted from going through recovery?
So many, but a couple. Maybe should we go like one for one? Let's see
Yeah,
how many
love that. Yes,
okay
yes.
ones we did. I feel like a like really obvious, incredible one for me was obviously this career path of fulfillment. And this is the case because recovery taught me not to settle for anything in this life other than what I deserve. And that was a really hard thing for me to like get my head around because recovery, at the time I thought it sucked, but it forced me to dismantle the life that I thought I wanted,
Yeah.
which was so hard, and start
Mhm.
again. And I am so, so grateful for that deconstruction every single life, every single day, because it
Yeah.
got me to where I am now. But I would have not known, booking that first psychology appointment. I remember I was like on the phone in tears. Like I was so stressed to just like call the reception and book in that it would get me here to this moment and it would completely change the course of my life, the work I want to do in the world, my understanding of fulfillment. So, I mean, career was like one of the very few gifts I got out of it.
That's something that I think continues to evolve the
Mm,
more that you're in the space. It's these gifts that you stumble upon even years later because maybe you have an interaction with someone where you're
mm,
like, oh, I forgot that I went through that, or,
mm.
I can now recontextualize that
Yeah.
as a strength because I can now pass on some wisdom or just a bit of understanding. Just sit with someone in the idea of like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been there too, just to be a face across the table that's now able
Yeah.
to, maybe interact with food in a different way or
Mm,
whatever it might
mm.
be. That maybe your work previously hasn't given you the opportunity to
Totally.
utilize, right?
Yeah.
I think not one of my favorites, but certainly if I think about this chronologically, one of the early gifts that showed up was the a bit of deconstruction myself, but it was more so to do with diet culture.
Mm,
And that really fed a lot of my early recovery was that it locked into kind of my sense of justice and right and
yeah.
wrong. And it really gave me an insight into what it feels like to like advocate for yourself. And if I
Yeah.
could feel this injustice and feel this anger on my own behalf that I'd been tricked and I'd been scammed, whether it was through beauty ideals, body ideals, or just, the functions of diet culture, time wasted, energy wasted, money wasted, investing in this thing that was never going to give me what it was promising. It showed me I actually did care about myself a lot more than I realized, but it really fueled
Mm,
me to speak about it publicly and to connect with other people. And I think it then helped me to challenge my eating disorder because it shared so many values with diet culture. Um,
mm,
and looking into things like the beauty myth, which I'm now very hesitant to recommend to people because the author has taken a little bit of a left turn in terms of some of her views. So as much as I still recommend it, I just don't want people to go and Google that and think that I share some of her later opinions. This was something written in the 90s, well before she took that left turn, but it was it was life changing. Like there's a lot about
mm,
recovery that's really boring and repetitive and it has to happen, even though it's not that insightful or life changing. This was life changing. This was
mm.
literally like feeling like I took a filter off and could see things with clarity and make
Mm.
informed decisions. But yeah, just
Mm.
the message it sent myself around the fact that if I felt angry about this, then maybe I didn't hate myself quite as much as my eating disorder had
Mm.
convinced me
Mm.
I
Mm.
did.
And it gave you a way to also use that anger. Would you say, Mel,
Mm.
I can't remember, would you say that justice is one of your core values?
Yes,
So I
very,
also feel like even if this was like probably the experience that really highlighted that for you and shifting into that value. I
yeah.
think on the diet culture, I think this is so interesting because obviously I also had this experience of just totally like being head to head with diet culture and having to really look at it. But my experience of kind of like dismantling that didn't necessarily lead me to like, what's right and wrong and justice. But I think it diet culture for me and being able to pull that apart entirely changed my understanding of love.
Yeah.
And what I mean by this is like, probably like you would agree with this as well. I was so dissatisfied with some of these ideas and beliefs that, were supposed to make me just feel acceptable and likable in the world, right?
Hmm.
And I was just done with just like the comprehensive mind fuck that is diet culture and being a female in this world.
Mm.
And just even the idea that thin was this rite of passage and that would equate to love and that like love meant being chosen, like none of these
Yeah.
things like felt none of them felt like right or true to me. And it was really my recovery that helped me dismantle a lot of these experiences and really just helped me realize that for me to be me and who I am in the world and who am always, evolving to become, I have to write my own story in this life, not live by this one prescribed to me by a society that's going to continue to profit on my low self-worth. So
Mm.
I think because of that, it really helped me understand a truly authentic and genuine form of love.
Hmm.
And that understanding of love took so many forms, which I think is so beautiful because this is where recovery gets expansive. Like love to me now means home. It's a
Yeah.
feeling, it's a way of choosing life, heart open, embracing the crap of life, knowing that I can wake up and choose a life that I want to live every day.
Hmm.
Because to me, love is self-trust, and that's what you get in recovery. It is also a trust with life, it's honesty, it's snacks in the cupboards and friends and books and family and slow Sundays. Like that's what love means to me now. And I had a very warped and disordered relationship to love
Mm.
before I went into recovery.
Mm. Yeah, beautifully put. And I think it leads into maybe one of not my more recent, but a constantly evolving gift for me, which is per permission. I don't know if that's the right word, but we're going to go with it. Permission to live life exactly as I want to in a very
Yeah.
unconventional way. I'm not a conventional person.
Yeah.
I am someone who just, it has never made sense to me that we have to go down these very prescribed paths. And that's always made me feel incredibly uncomfortable when I feel myself on a prescribed path. And my instinct is always to get out of it and to sort of figure out what is it that I want out of life. And I think without recovery, I don't think I would have been able to have that bird's eye view of my choices, my wants, my values, and that trust in that instinct of like, regardless of what everyone else is doing, regardless of the feedback you might be
Mm,
getting, like, keep heading in this direction. I talk about this a
mm,
little bit um, in my workshop. We both touch on it in the values workshop that we do at the retreat, which is it is sort of this unspoken just tug from your gut that is,
mm,
that feels good, keep doing that. And the first time I really felt it was when I was uploading videos to YouTube. And God love Louise, my mother. She said to me in the first couple of years, "What are you doing with that channel?" Um, I'm really worried because like she was correct to be concerned because I worked in incredibly conservative financial institutions. Like I shouldn't name them; they probably don't want to be named. Um, but incredibly conservative financial institutions, and she was just concerned about what this would mean. And I said, I don't care. I like it. It connects me to people. I feel good doing it. I feel like it is supporting my recovery. She was like, well,
mm,
what is it for? And I was like, nothing. I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that there is this instinct which is telling me to keep doing it.
mm,
And then obviously, as it sort of manifested into something a little bit more concrete, it made more sense to people. But it doesn't have to make sense to people for you to have permission to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like you
Yes.
have to be in the period where it only makes sense to you for it to then
Mm.
look like a business or look like advocacy or look like a channel or look like, you know what I mean? Like all of, like we always
Mm.
talk about the external thing. I have never been driven by numbers or reach or anything like that. It has always been that innate knowing and that tug in that direction that goes,
Yeah.
keep coming this way. And
Yeah.
recovery was my first, other than probably my creative pursuits. I've always loved writing. That's probably the other way that I've felt it, but never stronger than when I was in recovery, where it was like, even though if it's uncomfortable, keep going this way.
Mm. Oh my God, absolutely. Because I think what you're kind of getting at there is that for some of these like really formative experiences, like reassurance, trust, safety, like you're looking within for them. Like you don't require any external validation or yeah, like permission or tick of the box that like, hey, this is okay, this is accepted, do it. You were very
Correct.
much like forging your own path.
Yeah, like I was asked by a girlfriend recently who is interested in, being in the mental health field and starting her own business. And she was like, when you just do stuff, how do you do it? And it's probably my impulsivity, let's be honest. But it's not that I have no doubt. I tell you, and I even told the girls at the recent retreat, like every time I put something up, I'm like, no one's going to want this. No one's going to be interested in
Mm.
this. No one's going to come to this. But at the same time, I care about it more than I'm scared of it. And I think
Mm.
I think if we can boil down purpose, you have to care more than you're afraid. And
Yeah.
that's what recovery is too. You have to be
Yeah.
prepared to put the investment in before you get a guarantee.
Oh, absolutely. And say like, you hosted an event and no one came. It's like that doesn't mean that the event wasn't good and like the content wasn't good and like
You
you
didn't
had
learn something.
exactly right. I think if you're like brave enough to put your heart on the line doing anything, it honestly doesn't matter what the outcome is.
Totally.
I feel like this one of yours, yeah, it very much um like yeah, helps me re understand and almost like confirms this next one that I want to talk about. There's this idea I talk about in a workshop at the retreat called I call it learning to stay and
Mhm.
finding your center because, when we live lives of disembodiment, which is ultimately what an eating disorder is, a disconnection between mind and body, it feels like this sense of safety, like we were talking about last episode, but it is absolutely at the cost of losing yourself, right?
Mm,
And what this means is losing connection to yourself, your body, your values, your autonomy, your felt sense of self. And the gift for me here was learning to stay and understand that my reactions of disordered behaviors, them left unchecked, they were keeping me in this loop where I was looking at my present day life through the emotional lens of my history, right?
mm, mm,
And these disordered behaviors, they were actually just my past trying to like recreate itself and give me this like false idea of safety. But
mm,
learning to stay without the behaviors, with the discomfort, with the emotions, and doing that often, this is what course corrected that. And doing that thousands of times, this is what really created for me like a new, almost unrecognizable life where I no longer feared my emotional world. I felt safe in my body. I felt safe in my mind. And I felt capable of managing whatever was coming up for me because I knew how to stay in the storm without being blown away. And this just feels, it sounds like it's something that is like so simple. And it really kind of gets into the fact that, the behaviors are absolutely just the symptom. What's
yeah.
going on behind it, the emotional world, this is what we really need to tackle. So for me, a huge part of my recovery was tackling this emotional world and learning to be with myself, not avoiding myself. And that is something that I use every single day,
Yeah.
literally every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that because another one on mine was resilience
Mm,
and being able to pair resilience with flexibility and compassion as well, which is,
mm,
you don't always have to cope perfectly. It's just we're
yeah.
always trying to get back to this baseline of how we can be safe and how we can cope and how we can get back to like a more peaceful part of the spectrum of our human experience.
Mm,
But that resilience isn't doing it perfectly, responding perfectly. It's being able to be
mm,
with yourself through whatever it is you're experiencing, have the compassion to say, I can react to this how I need to in the moment to be here. And
yeah.
then continuously be moving towards something that is more adaptive and more, going to keep you in sort of a safe place, which is why we don't demonize eating disorder, right? Where we don't
Yeah.
say to people, well, you're evil and your eating disorder is evil for trying to help you to cope, even if it wasn't that effective. And we can see now that it was actually more destructive than it was helpful because it logically makes sense. We don't want to, we're not giving ourselves permission to stay there. And we just have too much to learn from why we ended up there that can actually
Mm,
help us get out and then stay out long term.
mm.
But never expecting that we're going to be like floating goddesses of perfect coping mechanisms and, perfect Zen
God,
stuff.
no.
That's never going to happen.
No, but even just learning to stay as well, it gives you the awareness of, right, like when you didn't, right? And you can be like, oh, okay, this is what was going on here. So even having that like increased level of introspection is so useful because otherwise we kind of just, without that, you would just be living life every day, just stuck in like blind reaction after blind reaction. Like, why do I keep feeling shit? What's going on here? Why am I responding in this way? So even just like having the skills to have the awareness of when we haven't learned to stay with ourselves is also so important.
And knowing our patterns, I think that's a huge one.
Yeah.
A huge thing we do at the retreat too is like get to know your patterns. And just from a data perspective, there's no judgment about them. Like one of those ones where I don't cope perfectly is I'm really bad at help seeking. I will always be bad at help seeking. I have skills and tools and self-awareness, which, like I said, helps me drift back to something that's more adaptive and more in that peaceful realm where I want to be. But I do drift outside of it. It's, when people might have narratives that they tell themselves, which are rooted into experiences in childhood. We're not even aiming to completely heal all these things. It's how your eating disorder then uses those things that we're trying to
Yeah.
break that nexus and then remove that so that you can meet that wound and tend to it and go, okay, that's just
Mm,
one of my vulnerabilities. That's okay. But and the goal here is not to be able to intercept everything before it happens, but it's why I teach people like awareness, intervention, redirection, because when we can be aware of ourselves and we can cope proactively, it means
mm,
that when things happen that we don't expect, we've got more capacity to kind of respond to that in real time.
mm.
But if we know our patterns, then a lot less things are going to sneak up on you and surprise you.
Oh, absolutely. This kind of leads to my next one. These are great, by
Great.
the
I
way.
love
These are
this. We've woven
fantastic.
them together.
A really big one for me was, which may not resonate with everyone, but it was really prominent for me, was this that my recovery was a huge spiritual anchor in my life. I started meditating sort of just before recovery and all through recovery and continued. It just is a practice that I continue daily now. This is really where I started to like look within, not without for answers. And this is just it's a really big pillar to how I emotionally regulate and check in with myself, etc. And I think it really ties to this idea that recovery is, well, for me and maybe for other people as well, it was this connection to something bigger and
Mhm.
something way more important than a individual's struggle to learn to feed themselves.
Mhm.
It is this, understanding of worth and humanness and messiness of life and
Yeah.
emotional depth and bodies and autonomy and how our past history and our families influence us and all these things. And I feel like that felt so expansive to me. The gift here was really realizing that like this is my struggle, yes, but it is also so similar to so many people who are struggling with their own experience. And it's just this like common humanity of everyone's going to go through really hard things.
Yeah.
And we all have to figure out how to support ourselves through it and also support other people as well. So it
Yeah.
was almost the gift there, I feel like, was this experience of unity.
Yeah, collective responsibility for
Mm,
sure. Yeah, that we are responsible for ourselves and we are also responsible insofar as we can be for each other as well.
yeah, yeah.
And that sense of community, which is a huge one for me as well, is community and connection.
Mm,
Because that was one of the things that eating disorder absolutely robbed from me was connection. And even just those initial months when I reconnected to friends of mine who I had drifted away from. But over the course of how many years has it been now? 11 years. I, this whole process has brought so many people into my life,
mm,
whether it's, girlfriends of mine that I've met through Butterfly, or you, or Carolyn, or, Saf, our
mm,
amazing coach in Dubai, or Megsy. Like I connected with Megsy when we were both just making content, like pre any of the business sort of stuff. I have
mm.
brought so many people into my life that A, wouldn't have been there, but B, I don't think that I would have appreciated and approached connection and community in the way that I do now
Yeah.
because I didn't have as much of an appreciation for it,
Mm.
and how important it is to, nurture those things. And that leads into another one, which is embracing vulnerability more, not always having to be the strong and stoic one, not always having to, project that everything's okay so that you're not a list, something on someone's list that they have to worry about, right? Like that's even
Mm.
transformed my relationship with one of my most important relationships, which is with Jose, which in 30 years, 31 years, keeps growing and building and getting stronger and closer. And one of the biggest turning points for us was my recovery. We got
Yeah.
so much closer because there was just this inherent requirement of vulnerability for us to be able to come back together. And
Mm.
it changed our whole relationship. Like her ability
Mm.
to be vulnerable changed the way that we share with each other now and support each other now. Yeah, I think that it was, as much as it was so disruptive to our friendship because it turned out the way it did and I was able to go through recovery, it was an absolutely key element to how we're able to be
Mm.
as close as we are now, ironically.
No, I feel like it makes so much sense. Even I get so much joy, and it's such a gift, even like working with the clients I work with and all the people, like just the across the board
Yeah.
of all the clients I've worked with and all the clients you've worked with. Like these are some everyone like just so many remarkable women who
Yes.
have like just touched my heart, and I look so forward to talking to them, and I just think they're awesome. Like
Yeah.
some of like just such rad women, which is so cool. I think
Yeah.
that's amazing. So my next one, this
Yes.
is I something it has been the one of the biggest gifts of my life, I would say, is this just magical, playful, purposeful relationship with cooking and food.
Oh, for
And
sure.
it is just this safe space for me. It is my place of creative expression and meditation and giving and offering. It's my love language, and also at the end of the day, when it's just me, like it's my end of the day wind down sanctuary. It's this sensory pleasure, and it continues to offer me so many lessons, and it's just this form of daily peace.
Yeah, and it's a gift to other people too. I think that would then tie into like the community and connection one, which
Totally.
is and purpose, because no spoiler alerts here, because you reveal these things as and when you want to, but there's definitely some things in the future for you that are very much tied to this deep passion and talent that you have. But it is also how you link to community and connection and how you show love and
Absolutely.
care. Um, and like I get to see that as well, you do too, because you're there running it. But like the cooking class, when we see people connecting to food in a whole new way and each other and challenging their perfectionism when we're like, and I'm there going, you guys think you're going to make ugly dumplings? Move aside. Wait till you see the dumplings I make, and then you all have permission to make whatever dumpling you're going to make.
Mm,
Um, and that's it is about the food and it's not about the food. That's what
yeah.
I love about, especially how Carolyn put those keys together, where one chapter is it is about the food and the very next one is it isn't, because it
Mm,
is, but
mm,
in the big picture, in the long term, this work is so not about the food,
mm,
but accessing it in the way that you do can be absolutely long term
mm,
such a beautiful way for people to access why it is and why it also isn't, how it can be an
mm,
expression of love and connection and
mm,
self-care and
mm,
romanticizing your life and all these
mm,
bigger, purposeful, meaningful things that we talk about. You put
mm.
layers on food that make it interesting for me. Because, like I said, if it was just about meal plans and getting people to be intuitive eaters, I wouldn't do this work.
And I love that point of recovery where someone's, pretty stable with a lot of the behavioral stuff. And we'd be like, cool. So we had this like emotional attachment to food. Now we've got it to neutral. And now we get to recreate it with all
Yeah.
this like color and light and connection, all these like beautiful things.
Yeah. And showing yourself love and showing it to others as well. Yeah, I think that the probably next one for me, and the one that keeps showing up, is that it is necessary to drop that expectation that there's like a finish line to
Mm,
anything, whether it's healing or self-expression or self-discovery or purpose or whatever, that there isn't this fixed outcome, which was a big challenge for me, even as I went through recovery, expecting that at the end I would be this fully realized, actualized
mm,
person who didn't experience anxiety or discomfort or doubt, and that nothing bad would ever happen again. And then through the process of recovery, it was, and then after as well, with sort of life stuff that happened after I was recovered, it was taking that pressure off that
Mm,
the goal is not to become this I've talked about this before, like the perfect version of me who's in a bubble in the future, just waiting for me to do all the things to earn her freedom so that she can be perfect and just have it all figured out. As much as I think that scares people sometimes as they're going through recovery, they're like, you
mm,
serious? Like, I'm still going to have to deal with being a human being on the other side of this. There's another part of it, which is like the pressure just drops that that has to be the goal. And that in fact, there is no goalpost there. It's just, like we said, like following that instinct, figuring out what you want out of life, trusting that, and not feeling like you have to live in boxes or in narrow
mm, mm.
pathways.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like another big one for me as well is actually just being able to embrace the detours and
Yeah.
be really open to that. And I think because you know how we were saying before, with particularly if someone struggles with a lot of rigidity, like cognitions and just how they want their life to be and everything like that, recovery forces you to realize that, hey, if you make the wrong choice, you just choose again. You literally
Yeah.
just choose again. Like this is just life. And I
Mm.
think that's really cool because so many people will be like, oh, but I want to make the right decision. I want to make the right decision. It's like sometimes there isn't a right decision. You know,
Mm.
there's a better decision, there's a
Mm.
more aligned decision, but
Mm.
you know what? Sometimes you got to make the wrong decision to figure out what the right one was, and that's fine. So I think the
Completely.
gift here is recovery really showing me that, like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to get it right all the time, and I'm not supposed to, and I don't really want to, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And
Mm-hmm.
I just want to, like, make mess and learn from it. Because I think when you realize that, like, recovery is like a big puddle of mess.
Yes.
Like it is just so messy. And when you realize that, like, this is cool, I can jump in the puddles, like, I can learn from this. I don't know, I think it just makes me like adaptable and flexible and like okay making mistakes. Actually, better than okay making mistakes. Like, I'm here to make mistakes.
Completely. I mean, I will often ask people when they're like, but I need to be perfect because people expect. And I'm like, I'm just totally honest with them. I'm like, when I'm around someone who I perceive as either perfect or trying to be perfect, I don't feel super comfy. Like
Mm.
I'm not relaxing in that situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the idea that, we can, it goes back to that whole thing of like us controlling other people's perceptions of us, which then ultimately works backwards because people are not connecting to the true, authentic you. Um, and so then what's that worth anyway, right? Like, what are you
Yeah.
missing out on and who are you
Yeah.
missing out on while you're performing as this person who you're actually not supposed to be? Yeah, I think that taking the perfect or the fully realized or the yeah, just the kind of untouchable, because I hear that so often from clients, like, I just want to be untouchable, emotionally untouchable. It's like, well, that means that you
Mm.
don't get any of the good stuff either. So, if we're encouraging people to be aware of how they can pick up on these glimmers, because obviously, like, people are in the trenches, they're head
Mm.
down, they're doing the stuff. The glimmers aren't easy to be looking out for when you're just sort of ticking boxes all the
Yeah.
time. But I think it's just little moments. Like something that we do with people on the South Coast retreat is I take them for a bushwalk. And something that I get them to do is to on the walk look out for something that to them is meaningful or beautiful or whatever, like just something that catches their attention, and to bring it with them. And as long as they're not, no one's picking things off trees, it's just if they can pick it up off the ground, otherwise take a photo, whatever. And it's always so interesting to see what people have at the end because they're always
Yeah.
different, and the lens that they're looking at that through is always so varied, and what is beautiful to
Mm.
them or meaningful. And actually, this time, somebody picked up a cicada shell. So in Australia, during summer, we've got these cicadas that make this most amazing noise. It's just like this cacophony everywhere you go, and they shed these shells. And she brought it with her to the end. And one of her things about the retreat, as a few people shared that they were afraid they wouldn't be vulnerable enough to get something out of it. And she said, I really feel like this sticks out to me because I feel like I have been able to shed kind of that mask. And I was just like,
Love that.
full body chills. Like, and I was just like, that's it, isn't it? Is just giving yourself these opportunities, whether it
Yeah.
is like, I'm going to go to this wedding or this thing with my girlfriends, and
Yeah.
I'm going to go in with the intention of thinking, if I thought back on this lunch, which eating disorder could easily hijack, if I look back on this lunch in 30 years, what will I want to remember? Time
Yeah.
traveling is something that I get clients to do all the time because I think it just does get you out of the weeds and helps you clarify what are the glimmers. Because if you
Mm.
imagine yourself as this recovered person or at whatever stage you feel is possible for you in however many years time, what would you hope would have been important? And then that's
Yeah.
going to crack that window open so much more because you're not just giving your eating disorder permission
Mm,
to be the thing that you're looking through at that
mm,
lunch or that wedding or that holiday or just like a walk in the park with a friend.
mm,
What are
mm.
the other things that you might hope you're paying attention to so that it forms a memory you can keep forever?
Exactly. And I think to be able to do that, there also is this piece of slowing down and actually being curious and witnessing how your life is changing because of the behavioral work that you actually have done. Like,
Yeah.
how have these behavioral shifts, how are they then informing your emotions, your ability to regulate, your ability to be present in conversations and trust yourself, and your responses to interpersonal dynamics, and even just how your values and desires and dreams are shifting because those things don't just happen for no reason. It's because you're showing up differently, because
Yeah.
how you're executing yourself in the world is different, and that is informing all these other layers of self.
Completely. Yeah. What have we witnessed at our retreats so far in terms of, because there's so many gifts that show up at the retreat.
Mm,
And I think people often come in on the first night. We always
mm,
ask, and we're the first ones to answer, what are people's fears or anxieties about coming into the retreat? And very often it's, I'm worried I won't give myself permission to do the things I need to do to get the most out of it. Or, I'm not going to be vulnerable enough, or I'm not going to be this, or I'm not going to be that. And then by the end, it's a totally
mm.
different conversation we're having.
Totally.
What
Everyone's
is
like, what fears?
Yeah, yeah. They're like, oh, it just happened. Like I didn't actually have to
Yeah,
actively
yeah,
like do these things.
yeah,
They just sort of unfold. What are some
yeah.
of the things you've seen, as far as some of those unexpected gifts we hear about people experiencing?
I feel like maybe the biggest one ever, of course, is just the connection to other women
Mhm.
who feel, breathe, and just understand this experience with such deep sincerity. I think
Yes.
women coming together with shared experience obviously is like nothing else. But for anyone who has, sat across the table from a dear friend and felt this like deep sense of feeling known and seen and understood, it's kind of like that, but on steroids. I think
Yes.
we're sitting around this dinner table telling these stories that not everyone can tell. And we
Mm,
are giving this proof of our survival to each other. And that is so fucking beautiful. And, I've had a few client sessions now with clients who came to the retreat, and it's so cool doing those like post retreat sessions with clients because, obviously working up to the retreats, we're talking about what do they want to get out of it and what are their fears, etc. And then they, report back of, yes, they experienced everything they wanted to, but it was actually so much more than they could have ever even envisioned or imagined.
yes.
And, if clients this week I've had this sort of repeated experience of clients saying, I'm feeling really regulated and I'm present in my body and I'm just in my mind without fear. And look, I don't want to toot our own
Straight
horn.
away.
That the horn is being tooted. But a consistent piece of feedback that we have gotten from this retreat is that this was the best weekend of my life.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
that is not, we
That's
don't
not
advertise.
recovery.
It literally has nothing to do with recovery, and we don't advertise it as that. But there is so many gifts that are so potent in recovery. But then when you put all these little people together in this like 5-day incubator experience where it is just vulnerability and sharing and laughter and joy, the gifts are like the whole thing is one giant gift.
Completely. And like I definitely skew towards being self-critical. So when I say like we can toot our own horn, I mean it fully because that is how confident I am in how
Mm,
incredible and magical this experience is and has been because the feedback is always so consistent. And that is definitely one of them, which is and of course, there are recovery specific things that we're doing at the retreat. But I think what they don't expect is, as we sort of already touched on, like the life stuff
mm,
and the bigger picture stuff, and the fact that, in so many of my one-to-ones with our amazing guests, they were saying, but the next phase, and I can't, and I'm not capable. And I'm like, but you have all the evidence in the world that you are. Look at this recovery thing that you've done and you are doing. Look at how you've been able to, invest all of this hope and all of this action into something that isn't guaranteed. And you've been able to consistently show up. And yes, with a bit of back and forth, that's a necessity. But that's how life is going to be too on the other side. And being able to, yeah, help them see it through a totally different lens and then leaving with this totally different sense of self and what's possible. And this, I think, making life more expansive for them and seeing that
Mm,
recovery is just this temporary avenue towards what you it's just a foundation for the house you're going to build on top of it, and you
mm,
get to build
mm,
whatever house you want, decorate it however you like, and then you get to live there forever. um
mm,
so I think, yeah, being able to finally see that switch on for people, where it's like,
mm,
oh, this is the recovery stuff, the
mm,
food stuff, the meal plan stuff, the behavioral change stuff. That's not the stuff that I'm going to remember. It's the whole life, whole person evolution that I'm going to remember.
mm.
I've said this a million times. I say it at the retreat. I don't look back on my recovery and go, oh, I'm so glad I'm not afraid of this food or that food anymore, because that's just all a part of life. It's just the background noise, right? Where it's all the substantive personal development stuff that continues to make a difference, that was the big light bulb moment, over and over and over again,
Mm,
and
mm.
continues to be.
It's just actually remarkable. I think we were, even saying on the first night, everyone's, obviously like a little bit nervous and everyone has they're a bit more reserved. And then even on, the last day, the last workshop, everyone's like lounged around and so comfortable with each other and just so open and honest. And it's just, yeah, it's super. Every time we finish a retreat, we come out of it and we're like, that was literally the best thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
But it's also just such a testament to the women who, show
Yes.
up and they are brave and they are gracious and they are just there to receive the gifts because they're open to them, right? They're
Yeah.
open to receiving the gifts.
And how they show up for each other is so
Yeah,
incredible. And
that
I
was
think
beautiful.
that's an unexpected gift that we experienced at the first one,
Yeah.
because that's been a through line, at all of the retreats, is how much they show up for each other, how much we learn from them as well, which, it's, as we always say, it's not us standing up in front of a blackboard, like pointing to the, the equation. It's very fireside chat. It's very immersive, and we're all just sort of sitting
Mhm.
around and discussing some of these themes and some of the topics that we're covering. But yeah, the way that they give each other permission to open up and to be vulnerable and to lean on each other, and doing a bit of both, like being held and also doing the holding. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, just I think that builds up so much confidence as well, is like, how can we show up for others? How do we maybe then learn about how we can then show up for ourselves in a different way?
Yeah, and just another last one I thought as well that I really witnessed in this was this last retreat was like, and it's congruent with all of them, but guests really understanding their value as a human being in the world.
Yes.
Right? I think that has been so significant,
Yes.
particularly if they are someone who is very much recovered, kind of a little bit isolated or been doing their own thing and only kind of had their inner world around them, to realize that they have so much importance in this group, in this moment, in this experience of life. It has been, I think, life-changing for a lot of people who have come to the retreats.
Completely. I think that, yeah, an unexpected gift of like, it's not really up to you if you're valuable. Like,
Yes. Yeah. You don't get to decide. And also
no.
just being able to seeing their value in a context that is so different from their normal life as
Hmm.
well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the warm and fuzzies that we do on that final night really
Mm,
encapsulates this undeniable evidence, when this group of women who you've spent a few days with are all saying the same wonderful things about you and your how you come across and how you add light to that
mm,
room is being considered. And like, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not the
mm,
Truman Show. We're not telling people what to say about each other.
mm,
And yet this consistent theme of their impact is being reflected back at them. And when you have
mm.
lived with a voice which tells you something about yourself that is so negative and so awful, to then have this overpowering evidence that that
Yeah.
cannot be true,
Mm.
that night is a real switch for people, a really big switch.
Yeah, and it's look, there's a lot of tissues. It's quite teary.
And
Um,
never more than us.
I know. You think that we would like neutralize a little bit of the emotion about these things, but we literally don't. We literally never do. But I feel like what would be great homework for everyone listening is like have a little bit of a look at your own life. What are some
Yeah.
of the gifts that you think you are already experiencing or starting to experience from recovery? Let us know. We'd love to hear about them.
Yes, if it's something that you're doing this week, going into it with that filter and lens of, if
Yeah.
I were to think back on this at the end of my life, what would I want to get out of this coffee with my sister, or, this
Mm,
walk in the morning, or even something that's not a lovely thing to do? How could you even see that a little bit differently and find a gift in that?
mm.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we love doing this. We may have to take another break over Christmas, New Year. We haven't decided yet what we're going to do. But we will obviously be back. It's just that sometimes fortnightly disclaimer is there for a reason when we have some intense stuff going on. But we love to hear from you in the comments. You can also leave us comments on Spotify, not on Apple, but we always love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for all of your beautiful comments and for showing up to be with us on these podcasts. It means the world.
Yeah, and for showing up for yourself as well. And thank you, Mel, for showing up for me for these conversations.
And thank you, Holly and Lola, for showing up. We do a bit more than she does, but thanks for the moral support. She's sleeping. But we will see you all in a couple of weeks.
Bye, everyone.